Hello, friends. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Strike what I just said to you, Bel K. It was fine there. It is 12:05 and a good afternoon. May I be the first to say we've got lots to get into this Monday, January 22nd, 2024. Lots happening, lots going on. It is episode 496 of our radio portion of the broadcast day on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And we invite you to be a part of every single moment of every single day. I thank you for being a part of right now. And whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. We have, as I mentioned, 180 minutes or 3 full hours before we hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson this afternoon. Libertarian lunch is in progress at 12:06, almost 12:07 this Monday. Allow me to get the pleasantries out of the way. We'll get things lumbering under its own weight. As we say, here we are and here we go. You can find us on a variety of platforms, obviously on the radio dial. Wherever you're listening, we thank you for listening there. You can carry us wherever you go on streaming applications of your choosing. Simply download SuperTalk 99.7 WTN on those streaming apps and take us where you go. We have an app. You can find that at 99.7 WTN, 99.7 WTN. Find our app and take us where you go that way. We appreciate that. And then there's, of course, Super Talk TV. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Super Talk TV is up and running as usual. Just having audio issues here. Super Talk TV up and running as usual via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I just said that. Episode 496. Headless Bell does not participate in Super Talk Television. He does, however, make our titles for us. And today's episode is entitled
Matt Murphy Show, asking one question. Why didn't Noah swat those 2 mosquitoes?
Well, I thought we haven't had, was that it?
Libertarian lunch, noon to 3. Eat the bugs.
You ever eaten a bug?
Yes.
What kind of bug?
Chocolate-covered ants.
Intentionally?
Yes.
Okay. I had an opportunity to eat crickets one time, and I declined the opportunity.
Eating those?
Have you now?
Yeah.
Why? Just say you had?
Yeah.
Say you did?
Yeah.
Would you eat an eyeball?
Have I?
Would you?
I'm trying to think if I have. For some reason, I want to say I have, but I can't think of the instance.
That's the I'm not into all of that. I'm weird about food in as much as I don't really have any foods that I don't like, except when you get into exotic things like that. We went through a period in my life. My grandfather decided he wanted me to eat every exotic thing known to man, and so we had rattlesnake and, frog legs that we gigged ourselves and all of those things. And I drew the line. I've told the story before. I drew the line at chitlins. Nope, not doing any chitlins.
I don't think I've ever had chitlins.
Yeah, you got to be pretty hungry, in my estimation, to have chitlins, or tongue for that matter. 615-737-9986. We'll use our tongues for the next 3 hours, and I would like you to use yours. Speak truth to power via the phone line, 615-737-9986. You can also super text the show at any point during the proceedings. We have a guest tomorrow that I want to tell you about today, because I want you to go to I always screw this up, and I want to not screw it up, and so I'm going to try to it's GOP Nashville. Not Nashville GOP. No, I didn't. Yes, it's GOP Nashville. If you go there, you can find information, gopnashville.org. Lonnie Spivak is head of the Davidson County Republican Party. Their mission, obviously, is to advancing limited government, lower taxes, less spending, and individual liberty in Davidson County. And there are plenty of Republicans in said same. I'm honored to be a part of an event happening this Thursday night, and you're invited to be a part of that. Go to gopnashville.org for more information. Lonnie will be on with us tomorrow to discuss the final seating. There's only a few seats left available. Glenn Jacobs is the reason for that. He's the keynote speaker. I think Congressman Andy Ogles will be there as well. I believe Jeff Byerline, who ran for the 5th Congressional District seat currently occupied by Ogles, will be a speaker too. I will be the master of ceremonies in the proceedings happening this Thursday evening, and you're invited to be a part. Go to gopnashville.org for more information. Later on today's show at about 1:05, Sarah Maccabee will be with us. Sarah is the wife of Williamson County Sheriff, or former Williamson County Sheriff's Deputy Ronald Maccabee, who was found guilty of a variety of crimes relating to January 6th, 2021. Ronald has been incarcerated ever since. And while what I believe Sarah will tell us today, and I'm not going to speak for her, she'll speak for herself about an hour from now, while I believe that both she and Ronald will accept the idea that he did a few things wrong, he has been politically persecuted and prosecuted as a result of his presence at the U.S. Capitol grounds on January 6th. We will talk with Sarah coming up at 1:05 this afternoon. We'll speak to you until then, 615-737-9986. And we start this afternoon with the presidential contest. Ron DeSantis is out. Many individuals in Camp Trump are extending an olive branch of friendship and reconciliation to DeSantis supporters. I wonder if DeSantis supporters will accept that olive branch of reconciliation or not. I believe many of them, if not most of them, will eventually come around to the idea that Donald Trump is obviously a sight better than a debilitated, a dissolving Joe Biden. Obviously, Donald Trump was and would be a better president than a non-existence of a president that is Joe Biden. There are only two left, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. We'll get to Nikki Haley coming up in just a couple of minutes. Here's the deal. I try not to overcomplicate things. And I advised you in 2023 that while it is up to you when you decide who your horse is in this long race, that you don't have to pick anybody until 2024. And in 2024, you will be expected to make some decisions about where you are and who your candidate is. That said, people selected in Iowa, Ron DeSantis saw no path to success in New Hampshire, obviously. He put a lot of eggs in the South Carolina basket and was seeing no results in the South Carolina basket. And over the weekend, the DeSantis folks went to their donors and asked their donors what their donors thought. And we're talking the big money boys, what their donors thought about him continuing in the race versus leaving the race. And eventually it was described to Ron DeSantis that he had no path forward. And when that becomes obvious, honest candidates make honest decisions, and it is as difficult as anything, especially when you're at that position of political power, right? When you've run for House of Representatives and you've taken care of business. When you've run for governor and you've taken care of business. When you've been reelected as governor with the wide majority that Ron DeSantis has been reelected, that comes with a little sense of I can do anything, I can accomplish anything, I can overcome anything. And obviously this was something he could not overcome. There will be a lot of, and already there is, quite a bit of over-analyzing what happened with regard to Ron DeSantis. It's not that difficult. Two things. One, Ron DeSantis reminded a lot of us of what politicians acted like before Trump. And we did not like that. Number two, Ron DeSantis made a calculated decision in probably as early as 2022, but certainly by 2023 upon his announcement, that there would be a broad category of conservative Americans that were over Trump in 2024 and would be ready to move on. And that wasn't true. It isn't true. It's true for some, but not nearly the numbers that Ron DeSantis needed in order to parlay that into a winning strategy in the primary. And that is as simple as it is. For those of you that want to turn Ron DeSantis into the enemy, I would suggest to you that you give me a call today so we can talk about that. Because if every other Republican known to man is your enemy outside of Trump, that is a poor long-term strategy for success for the United States of America, if I do say so myself. From an ideological standpoint, Ron DeSantis was never the enemy. And he would be hard-pressed to be my enemy in any way. because I believe in what he believes in. I believe in mostly what he stands for. Not everything, because I'm not a conservative. And so there are some aspects of what Ron DeSantis believes that I veer off of, and then it's why I don't categorize myself as a conservative. But he gets a lot of things right from a conservative position and from an ideological standpoint. I do not believe that Ron DeSantis failed because of his politics. He failed because of his persona, and he failed because he was going up against the man. I mean, to use the college football parlance, I mean, do we judge coaches against a Nick Saban because they fail in comparison to Nick Saban? Well, I guess that's fair. All is fair in love and war in college football. But I would suggest that it's unfair to compare Josh Heupel against Nick Saban when Nick Saban is widely considered to be the greatest there ever was. Similarly, I think these comparisons between DeSantis and Trump are somewhat unfair because Trump has completely changed the dynamic of the playing field that politics will exist on for the near future, if not forever. If not forever. Ron DeSantis believed that Donald Trump would be weakened by the many criminal cases and court cases against him. That has only strengthened him. Perhaps he believed that he could win over voters with a different type of personality. A lower key personality did not work whatsoever. And many voters considered that Ron DeSantis was too plastic for their taste. And that's something that Donald Trump has changed forever. And so there is that. So DeSantis is out. I said over the weekend that I thought that it would be an interesting stroke, and I do not take it. Look, I understand this is more of a long shot than it's not, but I'm telling you, it is not outside of the realm of possibility that Ron DeSantis could be considered for a vice presidential candidacy. Now, the biggest impediment is the Florida thing, but that is not it is not impermissible for two candidates from the same state to run on the same ticket. That is something that is misunderstood by a lot of people. But what does happen is that triggers a very quirky aspect of the 12th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States where their electors in their home state cannot be voted on for them. So they would have to win the Electoral College by a margin greater than whatever Florida gets, 29, 30, I don't know what it is. They would have to win the Electoral College by a greater number than that, or one of the two candidates would have to claim residency in a different state. This actually happened. This has happened in the recent, in modern times.
30.
Is it 30? Oh, I was pretty close. Thank you, Bill. Dick Cheney was charged with finding George W. Bush's vice president, and Dick Cheney ultimately decided that he was the guy to be vice president, and so he became the vice presidential running mate. In order to accomplish that, Dick Cheney, who had lived in Texas for some time, changed his residency and went to Wyoming and lived in Wyoming in the aftermath of, well, during the vice presidency and in the aftermath of the Bush 2 terms. He moved specifically to avoid questions about residency and whether or not Texas's electors would count for a Bush-Cheney ticket. So while it is permissible, it is inadvisable because you put some of those electors in question. I do not believe that Donald Trump is of the mindset that he needs Ron DeSantis in Florida. I don't think that Ron DeSantis is necessarily of the mindset that he needs to be vice president of the United States. I'm simply suggesting that it is not outside of the realm of possibility. Donald Trump did this before. Donald Trump had the chance to pick a vice presidential candidate in 2016 that was from outside of the Beltway, and instead he picked an established conservative in Mike Pence. And that served him pretty well till the very, very end. And I think it was fine at the end, too. I mean, there's a lot of folks that suggest that Pence is a turncoat and all of that. I understand that they had a difference of opinion about what authority the vice president had with regard to certifying the election and what authority he did not have, and I understand that that's still a constitutional debate that's ongoing. That said, I think Pence served Trump well in as much as He acted in a manner consistent with Trump's policies. He defended Donald Trump. He would not get caught up in the narrative of the leftist media who tried to drive a wedge between the vice president and the president of the United States during his 4 years in office. 3036 says, Matt, 2 white men aren't going to get elected. Well, I disagree with that. I think I understand the importance of a diversity pick, and I'm sad to say it. I would like for it to be best man, best woman for the job, period, end of discussion. But I understand that if you can avoid giving narratives to the mainstream media so that they can avoid, the mainstream media is going to spend the next year avoiding talking about Joe Biden at all costs. Understand that. And so anything you give them to run with, they're going to run with it. So if you give them the white guy narrative to run with, they're going to run with that. The calculus is, can you overcome their narratives that they present to the uninterested or unmotivated American that just starts paying attention a month out before the presidential election sometime in October? So it's almost as if you decide to select someone that looks the same as you, then obviously they have to overcome the fact that they look the same as you based on what the media is going to do with that narrative. Make sense to you? Sure. All that to say, DeSantis out. Nikki Haley's still in, at least until tomorrow night, where she will be beaten by Donald Trump, in my estimation, although it will be a pretty fairly closely contested contest. I would expect that Nikki Haley stays into until at least South Carolina because it's her home state. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. And Nikki Haley continues to put her foot in a bucket. I'll tell you what happened this time over the weekend on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Your telephone calls, your super text as well, 615-737-9986. We're just getting underway. It's 1222 on Super Talk. Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy, and let's talk for a moment about 2024 and your pain. Are you in pain in 2024? Is it something that is concerning you? Have you decided that you're tired of taking the pills on a regular basis? Or perhaps you've even gone as far as to get shots to try to alleviate some of the pain. Well, if that's the case, I want to introduce you to the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. They are located in Franklin, and within the sound of my voice, they are ready, willing, and able to help you with whatever pain that you might have on your body. Neck pain, back pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain can all be alleviated through the Dr. Gill Center. The Dr. Gill Center has been helping people for over 3 decades, and they've always been on the cutting edge of technology. They brought spinal decompression to the area, to Middle Tennessee. That's such a good thing. They use industry standard equipment like the Class 5 laser system, the red light therapy system, plus that spinal decompression, all designed to pinpoint pain in the body and to reduce that pain without the need for pills and without the consideration for surgery. Call today at 615-882-4838, 882-4838, the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 12:26. Glad to have you with us on this Monday edition of the Matt Murphy Show. January 22nd. Where has the month gone? January almost done. We're done on Thursday this week. Just to kind of telegraph that for you, signpost it for you. It's a short week for us. I'm out on Friday. Pamela Fur, the redheaded stranger, is in on Friday. Today is episode 496. We welcome Sarah Maccabee to the show at 105 to tell her story of what her life has been like for the past 3 years, what the life of her husband has been like for the last 3 years. Ronald Maccabee was convicted last October of a variety of crimes resulting from his presence at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. We will talk with him in studio coming up. Well, we'll talk to Sarah. Ronald is currently incarcerated. We'll talk to Sarah coming up at 105 this afternoon. 615-737-9986. So, a lot of response to who the best selection would be for Donald Trump. I don't know why so many are infatuated with the idea of Tucker Carlson being his running mate. I love Tucker. Tucker's great. I agree for the most part, although, you know, like any forward-thinking person, Tucker's going to throw some theories and such on the wall that I don't agree with. But that's okay, too. Tucker's not right 100% of the time. Murphy's not right 100% of the time, although we both think we're right 100% of the time. The issue that I have with Tucker as a vice presidential selection is more of personality than anything. Do you really think that Tucker's going to act in a manner to subjugate himself to the whims of Trump? What happens when Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump disagree on something? The expectation is going to be that Tucker Carlson accepts the disagreement, takes the loss, and agrees to comply with whatever Donald Trump wants at that given time. I don't believe that's in Tucker Carlson's nature. I don't believe that it is Tucker Carlson's nature to act as beta. And Donald Trump must have a beta. Am I wrong in that? Am I missing something about this? I don't think I am. In that regard, and that doesn't mean that having a beta as your VP running mate is a bad thing to the beta. I'm not casting aspersions at Mike Pence. But Mike Pence was willing to accept the idea that he was there to tote the water for his man. I don't believe that that's in Tucker Carlson's nature to do that. I don't think Tucker works as second fiddle to anyone. So, I mean, I guess that, I don't even understand why people are gravitating toward him. He has expressed no desire to be on that side of politics, although he's being questioned about it, and obviously he's going to be honored. Any reasonable person would be honored. I would say this. Of all of the vice presidential names out there, I believe that Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, would be right there in line with what I think Donald Trump would be looking for, in that he's a known commodity in Washington, D.C. Tim Scott is a good guy. Tim Scott reminds me to a certain degree of Mike Pence. He is very different than Donald Trump. You have on one side a certain level of bombast, of say anything bravado in Trump versus the calm, cool demeanor of a Tim Scott. You're checking diversity boxes, which, sad to say, is important nowadays. I frankly think that you perhaps can bring in a little more of the African-American vote, which is an important block vote that Donald Trump has already wheedled into over the years. Donald Trump has made a few more inroads in that block African-American vote than most Republicans have in modern times. I think you would add to that if you selected someone like a Tim Scott. And I don't see any downsides to Tim Scott. Kathy writes in and says, Matt, Tucker Carlson would be a master beta. That's good. That's good. I disagree. I think he's a master alpha, but I don't think that accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish. There's also smart money on Tulsi Gabbard. Once again, I don't know that you get those Democrat votes that you think you're going to get with the Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know. Maybe if I put my money on, Tulsi would be right up there with a Kristi Noem. If I put my money on a female vice presidential candidate, I think Kari Lake is a distant fourth or fifth or sixth with regard to female selection. So remains to be seen. Plenty of time. Donald Trump says he knows. Donald Trump says he's at least 25% that he has his person that he's going to select. We shall see. A lot to come between now and then. It's 12:32. Nikki Haley over the weekend said she would not be the vice presidential candidate. She's not going to be president either. I'll tell you why in just a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here for my friends at Savory Spice. I've mentioned over the years 2 separate locations to serve you. So there's a convenient location if you live in Nashville in that area. But if you're down in Columbia or Franklin Way, Brentwood, there's one in the downtown square in Franklin as well. Savory Spice is locally owned and operated by Holly and David. They're great people. And let me tell you, they have upped the food game of so many individuals in this community. It is hard to keep count of the number of people that have walked in and said, I heard about you on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. I want to up that food game. And the way that I up that food game is to up my spice game. And the way that you up your spice game is simple. Savory Spice. They have more salts than you thought were possible. When I was a kid, I thought salt was salt, right? Salt is not just salt. Ask them at Savory Spice. Plus, if you're a novice in the kitchen, they can help you get up to speed by getting you a spice collection that you'll need for any good recipes that you cook in your kitchen. Friends, Savory Spice is the place to be. Ask them about their delicious spices, their delicious recipes that they have at Savory Spice today. Just off the square next to Gray's Pharmacy in Franklin, L&L Market on Charlotte Pike in Nashville. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the one and only Savory Spice. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Glad to have you with us discussing Ron DeSantis leaving the presidential contest, deciding that it was not his time. It's not that difficult for me to understand. I mean, there's a lot of dissection about what Ron DeSantis did wrong versus the very little that he did right. He ran up against a juggernaut that still had life left in him. Ron DeSantis believed that he was racing a car that was out of gas. I mean, it is that simple. And he discovered that this car was not out of gas. Far from it. The vehicle that he was racing against was built to last and had changed the nature of the race that they were in, quite possibly permanently. And for those reasons, Ron DeSantis never had an opportunity to gain any traction. Does that mean that he's soiled goods? I don't believe so. I said last week, Ron DeSantis needs to get out of the race sooner rather than later to prevent permanently damaging himself for 2028 and beyond, and he did so. Will Trump people forget all of the issues that they had with DeSantis when Trump is off the main stage? Yes, I believe that's so. The bigger question is, will DeSantis people forgive and forget what the Trump folks have said about them? Because some in those camps got a little nasty with one another, got nastier than it perhaps needed to. I do not believe that there's much of an ideological divide between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. Unlike Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, there's a huge schism between those two individuals as to how they view politics. And it wasn't so much so when she was an ambassador for Trump, but it certainly is now when she attempts to present herself as different and as capable as the 45th president of the United States of America. What Nikki Haley is unable to do, sadly, is navigate the mainstream media. And she, once again, was attempting to do so over the weekend as she continues to fall into the racism trap set by liberal Democrats. You might recall that Nikki Haley was asked a trap question a week or so ago. It seems like a year ago. You know, it was just last week when all this snow fell. I mean, you weren't even here, Belle. But it was just a week ago. It seems like it's been a month since there hasn't been snow on the ground. That's the way it feels.
It's now been 7 days.
And it's been 7 days. Anyway, I forget when it was exactly when Nikki Haley fell into this trap where the guy said, what were the causes of the Civil War? And she goes, well, I don't know. I mean, you know, to hear it told now, just a week or so later, the exchange went this way. What was the cause of the Civil War? I don't know, but it sure wasn't slavery. Oh, okay, then. That's not the way that it went, but that's how the mainstream media is reporting on it. And then Nikki Haley went on to say that we've never been a racist country, which got a lot of people to question where she learned her history. And I'm not trying to get back into that discussion again. I think it all depends on what it means to be a whatever country. Are we a patriotic country? Are we a this country or that country? I do believe that we inherently have to accept the idea that America was born a racist country in as much as we were enslaving a race of people and considered them property. And once again, I'm not judging us against 2024 values when I say that. I'm simply commenting on history. And a lot of people get their dander up when you do that. Well, I'm not here to tell you things that you like to hear. I'm here to tell you the truth. Well, Nikki Haley has now been caught in another. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I just know this. I'm about Nikki Haley's age. I think she's 52, just turned 52. I'm 50. She's about a year and 4 or 5 months older than me. She grew up in Bangburg, South Carolina. Bamberg, South Carolina, or Bainburg, South Carolina. And I grew up in Thompson, Georgia, which is just across the South Carolina-Georgia border. You know, there's Augusta, North Augusta, which is the same city. It's just divided by the Savannah River. At about 30 miles from Augusta is little old Thompson, Georgia, Thomsom, no P in Thompson. So Nikki grew up less than 2 hours away from me and about a year older than me. Here's what Nikki Haley said about her childhood when answering a question regarding race and racism.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the Deep South as a brown girl. Anybody can look at my record and see when Walter Scott was shot down by a dirty cop, how I made sure that the Walter Scott family didn't suffer because we put the first body camera bill in the country in place. Anybody can look at the fact that when we had 9 amazing souls die in Mother Emanuel Church, I did something that no Republican or Democrat ever wanted to touch, which was call for the Confederate flag to come down because it would take 2/3 of the House and Senate and was an impossible feat. I don't know what you're implying with that, but what I will tell you is saying that I had black friends is a source of pride. Saying that I had white friends is a source of pride. If you want to know what it was like growing up, I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me. So look, I know the hardships, the pain that come with racism. It's the reason that I fight bullies every day when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, or hate, and I always will. If I didn't mention slavery on that day, it's because that's an automatic. There's always been, the Civil War's always been known about slavery.
So there's a lot to unpack in that clip. Nikki Haley is falling into this trap, and she repeatedly does it over and over again, where she's asked these gotcha questions and she doesn't know how to rise above it and thinks that she has to prove her bona fides to people. I'm not here to prove my bona fides to you. Well, we hear that you're a racist. Prove to us that you're not a racist, Nikki Haley. Oh, I have black friends. Oh, you're a racist. Well, I'm a brown person. Oh, you're a racist. And then we start saying things that seem like we're making things up. Like she was disallowed from a beauty pageant. So what you are doing is opening yourself up to further questions about what the hell you're talking about. Instead of saying, I'm not, in no way, I treat people based on their character and based on how they treat me. I treat people as individuals. And you are an individual, whether your skin is black, brown, or white, or any other hue or any other color that you want to name on the color spectrum. How dare you suggest we are a part of one race, the human race? I understand our history. I understand our background. I understand that people have to overcome different obstacles in their lives, whatever their color might be, and that's it. And I am here to provide a fertile and level playing field in the greatest country on God's green earth for everybody, and that's it. I'm not playing these gotcha games with you. Instead, she plays in their arena, and they set the game up where you're going to lose. So when you're saying that, well, when you're saying stuff like this.
Up, I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me.
You know, I grew up during that same time, less than 2 hours away from you. Bainburg, South Carolina was a town of about, 3,000 or 4,000 people. I grew up in a town of about 6,000 or 7,000 people. So I feel like I have an understanding of where you grew up, Nikki. And my recollection of the South during the time that you grew up was not a place of racism and bigotry and hatred. Was there some around? Sure. Could you find it if you looked for it? Absolutely. But this suggestion that every Southerner was a big-time racist in the mid-1980s is garbage. Absolute garbage. You're trashing Southerners to prove your bona fides, Nikki, and I don't appreciate it. As someone that grew up in the same neck of the woods, in the same part of the world as you did. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Now, maybe I'm wrong. I was not privy to the inner workings of beauty pageants in the mid-1980s. So the questions that this series of comments leads us to with Nikki Haley, because once again, I didn't bring up the beauty pageants. You did. I don't really care, but you apparently do. So much so that you're bringing them up on the campaign trail. So it begs a couple of questions. One, what years were you participating in beauty pageants? Was it in 1984? You would have been around 12 years old. That makes sense. 1984, wasn't that the same year that Vanessa Williams won Miss America? Vanessa Williams, mixed race individual, brown person, won Miss America in 1984? Was that the year you're talking about, Nikki, when you were 12? Maybe it was later than that. I don't know. Maybe it was earlier than that. I don't know. When are you talking about these segregated beauty pageants? Because that's what you said, not what I said, what you said about your growing up.
It was like growing up. I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me. So look, I know.
She's getting all tough, and she's saying something that I don't believe is true. Now, I suppose that I could be proven wrong. My experience growing up as I was considered a white guy. My grandfather's Indian, Native American Indian, not Nikki Haley Indian. And I don't recall any level of bigotry or anger or discrimination. Was there racism amongst 12-year-olds in 1984? Yeah, there was. 1985? Yeah, there was. I remember it. I remember young 12-year-olds trying to act cool by using language that they knew was inappropriate to use. But racism on a systemic level, maybe we just missed it. Maybe I got lucky in the small town of Thompson. I remember being mortified. There's a photograph of me in the McDuffie Progress, which McDuffie County was the county in which Thompson was the county seat. There's a photograph of a Klan rally marching down the street in downtown Thompson, and a bunch of us, I was 13 years old. This was around 1986. I remember a bunch of us from Norris Middle School left school, and we knew that there was a march. It was a Friday afternoon. We knew that there was a march that afternoon starting at like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something along those lines. And we wanted to see what the hell was going on. And we were there not in any way to support it. I didn't know what the Klan was necessarily. I knew it was a bad organization or an organization that I didn't want any part of. At the same time, there was a photograph on the McDuffie Progress front page. There were two photographs, one of the march and one of the crowd. And there I am in my camouflage hat that my grandpa gave me, standing amongst the assembled crowd. And I remember when that came out, because my grandmother still got copies of the McDuffie Progress. It was a twice weekly paper. And I remember being afraid that I would be thought of as a supporter of that kind of thing. At the age of 13, I remember that. You know what I don't remember? Segregated beauty pageants, because I don't think they ever happened, at least for Nikki Haley. It is 12:50. And this is what happens when you attempt to play by the narrative rules of the political left. The political left is only interested in destroying you, Nikki. You ought to know that. 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. It's 12:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A couple of minutes left in the Libertarian lunchtime hour of the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. We've got 2 more hours to go after that. Hour number 2, we will be joined by a guest, Sarah Maccabee, whose husband, Ronald Maccabee, remains in jail in the aftermath of the January 6th, 2021 event. We also have news regarding that event and some of the subsequent reporting in the aftermath of January 6th. A lot of the mainstream media has made a lot of hay in and around the Capitol building, but they've avoided, it seems to me, coverage of the supposed pipe bomb that was left outside of the Democrat National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C., a place where Kamala Harris visited on January 6th, the morning of January 6th. Well, there seems to be good reason why they've ignored that story. It turns out that those pipe bombs, based on the reporting we've seen recently, were inoperable and potentially were known about by the Secret Service and the FBI. And that they are now covering up. This new evidence suggests that the FBI, no shocker here, that they are covering up their knowledge of what went down on January 5th versus January 6th. We will cover that story for you in the next hour on the show, and we welcome Sarah Maccabee to the program, and that's happening in mere seconds on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Stand by for news, and we're back right after this.
You should have it first. Always. The breaking stuff.
All right, kids, here we go. Lots going on. 105, good afternoon. Welcome back. Matt Murphy and you, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Lots of ways to listen and watch the show. You may listen on 99.7 FM. You also may listen on any internet streaming platform of your choosing. Wherever you stream music or information, you can find us. Just type in Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can also watch on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. That is ongoing for those masochists out there that want to see my face. Although the room has considerably been brightened by the presence of Debbie Matthews, who joins us in studio this afternoon. Hello, Debbie.
Hello, Matt Murphy.
How you doing?
I'm so good. Good to see you.
I like your sweater that you've got on. I don't know that anyone can see that on Super Talk TV right now, but it's nice. It shows off your icky black heart.
Yes, it's a big black heart right in the center. That's right. I am a dark soul. No, I'm not. I'm shiny happy, but I'm pissed about some things.
There's a lot of dark souls going on right now, considering Washington, D.C. and what's going on around the country. So I so appreciate you being here.
Well, I love my WTN folks. I love you and appreciate you. And when I called and said, hey, we've got a big event in the Conservative Republicans of Murray County on Monday night, the 22nd. You know, we've got a January 6th prisoner's wife here that is coming to speak. Love to have her on the show. Thank you, Matt, for
Well, it's our pleasure to have her, and she is a voice and a name perhaps that is familiar to those of you who listen to Super Talk on a regular basis, whether it's Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis or Chris Hand. She is Sarah Maccabee. She is the wife of Ronald Maccabee, who is a former Williamson County deputy who was convicted this past October of 5 felonies for his role in the January 6th issues surrounding and involving the United States Capitol. And Sarah joins us in studio. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a privilege to have you. It's a privilege to talk with you, and I appreciate your willingness. It's got to be a painful retelling of events that led to your husband's incarceration and his continued incarceration, but I appreciate you putting a spotlight on what's going on in Washington, D.C. and around the country. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Do you consider what is happening to your husband political persecution?
Absolutely.
Okay. I thought so, and I do as well. But I want to start at the beginning for those who perhaps have not heard the story. And I just want to let you kind of lay the story out there without any interruption by me. Tell us what led, let's start here, what led to Ronald, does he go by Ronald?
Colton.
Colton? Okay, very good. That's why I ask. What led Colton to want to be at the Capitol or in Washington on January 6th?
Yeah, so of course the stolen election of November, he was really upset about that. And he was talking to a friend about going who had already gone to the November protest in Washington, D.C. And so he was planning on going on January 6th. And my husband had been in a car accident just 9 days prior. So he was in no shape or form to go. But in a marriage, you know, you pick and choose your battles. And so I trusted at the time this friend to take care of him, and he had every right to be in Washington, D.C. that day to air his grievances with the government. And so he went to Washington, D.C. with his friend, and they went to the speech that morning. I truly believe that he didn't know what was about to unfold because I don't think he would have ever went to the Capitol knowing what was already going on down there. And he went down there with his friend, and they met at the Peace Circle, and there wasn't as much chaos breaking out at the time, but there was just waves of violence that was happening, and there was just a sea of so many people. And he saw the gentleman get shot. Matthew Black got shot with a rubber bullet in his cheek. And him being a first responder, he was trying to, calm the crowd and all of that. Well, he found himself at the Lower West Terrace Tunnel around a little bit before 4:30 in the afternoon. And that's really where the violence was happening with the police officers. And as he's made his way up there, just simply because there was no turning around. I mean, you're in a sea of people when you look at the footage. And so he made his way up there. And as he was up there, they had already cleared the tunnel because it was full of people. And then the police line had cleared the tunnel out. They had sprayed OC spray, pushing people out of this tunnel. So there was a mass pileup of people down there. And there was a woman who had collapsed in his arms that he pulled up from the ground. And then that's when he looked at the ground, and there was a police officer lying on the ground. And him being a law enforcement officer, he went to aid this police officer. As he's trying to aid this police officer, he sees Lila Morris beating Roseanne off Roseanne Boylan off to the left. And so he's communicating with these police officers. I'm one of you. I'm helping you. He gets hit by a police officer. He's assaulted first by this police officer, another one. And he just shoves him open-handedly, shoves him to create space. What he's taught to do as a law enforcement officer. Says, I'm helping. And he goes to help this police officer, and they slide down the stairs together because another protester was pulling his leg. And he's down over top of him. He's on his hands and his knees, protecting him. He's telling the crowd, no, quit, stop. The police officer says, get off me. He says, I'm one of you. I'm helping you. The officer says, I know, help me up. Rolls him over to his side, gets him back to the line of duty, goes to try to resuscitate Roseanne Boylan. They decide that him and a group of protesters decide to pick up her body, move it back to the police line. She was turning blue. She needed medical attention. He starts to give her chest compressions as they drag her body away. And the crowd kind of disperses. He's the only one standing there. And they spray him with pepper spray. And he's like, I'm not hurting anybody. Stop spraying me. He's literally standing there by himself up against the brick wall. And a third officer that watched this entire thing go down thanked him twice on video for his help. Mm-hmm. And the crowd surges up. They're really upset about what just happened with Roseanne. And this officer who thanked him puts his arm around him and says, I got you, man. I got you. 7 minutes of his life. He has now been incarcerated for 29 months.
Solitary confinement.
A lot. Well, obviously, there's a lot to unpack in the aftermath of January 6th, and a lot to unpack what you just said. Do you communicate? Do you have the ability to communicate with Colton?
Yes.
How often are you able to talk with him?
At least once a day, depending on if they have open communication.
How's he doing?
That's a loaded question.
I just...
honestly, it's a one day at a time thing. I truly believe it's only by the grace of God that these guys are still standing, 3 years later after all the persecution that they have been through at the hands of their own government.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't... Can you... We have talked several times, but they didn't let him trim his nails, have a shower.
Yeah, it was really bad in Washington, D.C. When they first got there. So for 2 years, they were not allowed haircuts. They were not allowed to clip their nails. They were not allowed to have chapel. They were not allowed to leave the pod. They weren't even allowed visitation, nor video visits, because they didn't have that system implemented. So for 2 years, not only were they in the fight of their life with the federal government for January 6th, they were actively being hidden from their families. Spouses couldn't see their loved ones. They didn't get to see their children. Their mail was tampered with. They literally were trying to hide them from the world. They were trying to get them to shut up.
I mean, it's difficult to conceive of how our justice system has been perverted in the political execution of what they're trying to do, which is pretty obvious to those of us who are observing what's going on. But I want to try to establish a baseline because we don't know each other, and I've never had the pleasure of meeting your husband. Do you and or Colton accept that he made mistakes on January 6th?
That's a question.
Well, he did swing at an officer.
No. So,
I saw the video those here.
Yeah, no, he pushed him away after the officer assaulted him.
Well, no, and I'm not trying to turn your husband in the bad guy. I'm just trying to establish some. The officer came up to him as he's standing over this. He's not even hurting this officer. But he pleaded guilty, didn't he?
Yes, because that technically, if you're looking at the law, officers are above the law. So they are allowed to beat you, and you're not allowed to protect yourself. You're not allowed to even say self-defense or defense of a third party.
No, I disagree with that, but go ahead.
I don't think cops should be above the law.
I agree with that.
If they attack you, as a law enforcement officer, you're taught to create space between you and the threat. And at that time, the person who attacked him was a threat. And so all he simply did was put his hands up on him to create that space.
Right, and if he was that police officer and somebody put hands on him as a deputy of Williamson County, he would take that as a threat and he would respond
accordingly. Sure, but after he did that officer didn't do anything because he said, I'm one of you, I'm helping you.
I'm not trying to argue.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get in the weeds on it.
Sure.
I'm just trying to establish if, looking back on this, Colton recognizes that he could have made decisions that day that would not have put him in a position to be falsely accused of felonies.
To be honest with you, I think if it would happen tomorrow and he knew what was coming, he still would have done the same thing. Because that's what he's taught to do. There was an officer that was down that the crowd was trying to get to, and he stood in the way from the crowd to that officer, and he tried to save a woman's life. I think anybody would have done that. Any man of dignity, and especially anybody, law enforcement, whether you're on duty or off duty, you're taught to run into action while other people are running away. So what I saw in that 7 minutes of video footage, I saw an officer in action. And he's communicating. He's not just throwing his hands around and creating chaos. He's trying to be the calm in the chaos. And he's communicating with the officers. I'm one of you. I'm helping you. You have a man down.
Right. Those officers, does he look at them now as bad actors?
No, what this has proven is that the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police, those two agencies are untrained. They should have never been in the position that they were in that day, but they certainly are supposed to be taught techniques, escalation techniques. And what they were doing to that crowd, that's not how you get a crowd to calm down.
Didn't the police officer that was down that your husband helped testify on behalf of your husband?
He testified, but the officer that thanked him testified on behalf of him.
Okay.
So what was he initially? Was he initially charged with 5 felonies?
Yes.
And why did he make the decision in your communication? Why the decision to plead guilty to some of these?
It was the 111A, and that was when he pushed the officer away, because technically in the eyes of the law, that you're not allowed to touch an officer. I personally, as a citizen and a law enforcement officer, wife of 7 years, don't believe that should be a law. Officers shouldn't be above the law. They should be held accountable for their actions.
Wait, so you believe that citizens should be allowed to lay their hands on police officers?
I think they're allowed to protect themselves. If an officer attacks you, you should be allowed to protect yourself.
Okay. And Colton felt he was being attacked.
He was hit with a baton by Carter Moore.
Right. So I'm just, once again, I believe, and I wasn't there, but I believe that I would recognize advancing on those stairs would be putting myself in a bad position, particularly when, as you just said, the officers had just cleared a tunnel and they were attempting to clear the stairway.
So that officer that was down on the ground, Andrew Waite, was in harm's way. So you wouldn't insert yourself to try and help him, who was on the ground. He was defenseless.
Right. So in order to do that, and you know more about this situation than I'm just learning.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
I'm just learning. Your husband felt like he was the one in position to assist the officer as opposed to the other officers on the scene.
Well, he said you have a man down, and they didn't do anything.
So he felt like he should insert himself in that situation.
100%. He gave them the opportunity to help this officer, and they didn't. Another officer had just went down the stairs. Blake Miller had just went down the stairs seconds prior, and they didn't do anything to help him.
Now, my take on what has happened on January 6th, pulling out 50,000 feet, is that I think it was a tinderbox exacerbated by the fact that the officials on the scene, including Nancy Pelosi, who was in charge of security, did not provide proper security for the Capitol at the time. And there was some level of infiltration amongst the crowd with federal officials, and that led to an ignition of that tinderbox, and it led to people doing things that they probably wouldn't have done under normal circumstances, and it led people to do illegal things on the Capitol grounds. Broadly, do you see it that way? I mean, I know you're very, very close to the forest, so it's difficult to see the trees.
Yeah. No, I think if you want to look at the violence that happened that day, because there absolutely were bad actors in the crowd. Good people did bad things, reacting to things around them. But if you want to pick out the violent versus nonviolent, and you look at what those waves of violence were, look at what happened minutes prior to all the violence breaking out. So in his particular case, Roseanne Boylan was murdered by a police officer right in front of their eyes. She was clubbed to death. And the police officers did nothing about it. The protesters were trying to save her life. Well, 30 minutes before that, inside the tunnel, Captain Bagshaw beat a woman 40 times and punched her in the face and beat her with a baton, Victoria White, who was a January 6th defendant who is now serving her time. She was beaten by the police officers. So elderly and women were being beaten. That's why American patriots were so upset at the police officers that day.
You believe that they were upset because of the violence that they saw in that secure area?
Yeah, because there's a woman who is down on the ground.
Well, but there was also recognition, or was there a recognition that they had breached a secure area?
No, because how can you trespass if you don't know you're trespassing? They were not inside. The snow fencing that they had up was gone.
I'm not arguing that your husband should be in jail. Okay? I'm arguing I believe that your husband should be at home right now. Okay? But I would push back on this concept that people aren't aware that they can't walk at their desire into the United States Capitol.
They weren't inside.
They were on Capitol grounds, and the Capitol Police were telling them to exit the property, right?
Whoever said they said to exit. So they had snow fencing up.
Hey, once again, I don't want to argue about particulars necessarily, but I mean, for me, it's a common sense situation where if there are groups of officers that are demanding that we disperse from the area that we're currently in, that your husband would be aware.
Sure, if they said that.
And they didn't.
No. And it was so loud that day that they had
sirens
sirens
your
going
argument
off.
Is your husband was not aware that he was in an area that he should not be.
Sure, if you want to argue that, slap him with a trespassing charge and give him a misdemeanor and a fine for everybody that day. But how do you know you're in a secure location if there's no signs that you're trespassing? If the snow fencing is already gone, police officers are letting people inside and they're not telling you to leave.
I mean, I would think that your husband would be better able to recognize a breach of a perimeter than most anybody on that property that day based on his training.
If there was a perimeter.
Oh, there was a perimeter. I mean,
it was gone by the time that they got there. Most of them, because it was already breached while the speech was still going on at the Ellipse.
And once again, I don't want to get caught in the particular details, but I mean, I recognized the misdemeanor. I mean, from my take, that there were some misdemeanors that were breached.
Sure.
There were trespassing that was breached. If you want to argue that it was a disruption of a lawful assembly, that's fine too. What is happening, and more broadly, what I'm concerned with is the political nature of the persecution that happened to your husband and others in the aftermath of the day's events. Do you believe he got a fair trial?
No. How can you have a fair trial when the judge, every person that sits on the jury pool, the prosecution, and most of the defense attorneys are named victims in the case?
Right.
Every person that was in Washington, D.C. on that day are named victims in these cases, yet those are the people that are deciding the fate. And there's been no change of venues granted.
Let's talk about that your husband requested bond, and he was able to come in front of a Tennessee judge, Judge Frensley, and he granted him bond to be released. And D.C. immediately appealed that, correct? Mm-hmm. And then sent him back or didn't release him, so he had no bond.
Correct. Because he was apprehended in Tennessee, he went in front of the Middle District of Tennessee, Judge Frensley. And after several back and forths, different reasons to recess, he was granted bond pending trial. Yet the government didn't like that. And so they immediately appealed it, and it went in front of a D.C. judge who they knew they were going to keep him.
All right, everybody's mad at me. Everybody's mad at me.
They should be mad.
Everybody's mad at me. I know, everybody's mad at me. Everybody's mad.
No, wait a second.
No, hold on.
The thing is, the first question I asked her when she was on our radio show is, did you want to beat your husband's ass or not? Because that's the first thing as a wife going, what the hell have you gotten yourself into, and why are we in this predicament right now? However.
Everybody's upset at me.
But 2 weeks ago, we had a Palestinian riot to promote Palestine. There was violence, and they occupied a building, and there was not one arrest.
Look, everybody's mad at me for questioning Sarah in the way that I am. Are you mad at me?
No.
Okay,
I
good.
appreciate this dialogue.
Well, I think it's important.
My story's been my same story.
I'm just trying to learn.
No, I don't believe my husband did anything wrong. I believe it could have happened at the Tennessee State Capitol. It could have happened in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. He ran into action. He saw an officer down and he tried to save a woman's life. I think any law enforcement officer or any man of dignity would have done the same thing. It just happened to be on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol.
Let me just give you some examples of what I'm dealing with. Let me just give you some examples of what I'm dealing with. Tread lightly, Matt. You're coming across as an ass. Beta thinking is backing the blue. You're such a loyalist. Your husband was a police officer, right?
Yeah.
He was a police officer. Yeah.
Right. Which blue am I backing here? You're way off target. You're an ass. You're claiming you're not trying to convict her husband. I'm not trying to convict anybody. I'm just trying to figure out if Sarah believes that Colton did anything wrong. That was it. That was all I was trying to figure out. It's 1:25 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be back in a moment. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. I want to talk to you about the world-famous Glock store. McGill's Glock Store is on Elm Hill Pike on Airlane Drive. And by the way, there's a big event coming up on February the 3rd that you want to know about. If you go over to shoot270.com, that's shoot270.com, it's the Glock Store Shoot 270 event space site. And you'll see the Sentinel training event that's happening on February 3rd. It is intensive training, not for the novice. It is more advanced training to help you understand critical response situations and what to do and what not to do, most importantly. It is a great opportunity for you to get some advanced training at the world-famous Glock Store in their incredible Shoot 270 rooms. They believe in rooms, not lanes, because they believe life happens in rooms, and I believe that as well. So I would invite you to go over to the world-famous Glock Store's website. Go to shoot270.com or glockstore.com. You can find your way to the event training either of those ways. I'm going to be there that day. I'm excited about that, and it's limited in numbers. They can only accommodate, I think it's roughly 20, maybe a little less than 20 individuals. So there's still 1 or 2 slots available for you. Go over to glockstore.com or shoot270.com or stop by and see them off of Elm Hill Pike on Airlane Drive. It's the world-famous Glock Store. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for being with us. Debbie Matthews is in the house with us. Also, Sarah Maccabee, who is wife of Colton Maccabee, who remains in custody in Washington, D.C. Debbie was asking a question moments ago, and we've only got about a minute in this segment, but we have another one after the bottom of the hour. But how in the world is it that Colton has not been offered an opportunity for bail or to be able to be home in the interim between the time that he was charged with these crimes and arrested and the time that he went on trial? It seems, I mean, I understand the trial happened in October, but it seems pretty ridiculous that he was not allowed to be home with his family.
So Judge Frensley, Middle District of Tennessee, granted him bond after we went into recess twice prior to that in September of 2021. The government immediately appealed that. It went in front of Emmett Sullivan in Washington, D.C., where he said no.
Why?
No bond.
Why?
They said he was a danger to the community. But Judge Frensley here...
He's a sheriff's deputy.
Well, that's what Judge Frensley said. He said, okay, so he's never had a strike on his record. He's been a law enforcement officer for 7 years. You knew about him for 90 days. And you didn't apprehend him. You watched him at his house. You watched him at work. You watched his wife. You didn't pick him up for going through a red light, for rolling through a stop sign. You waited 2 weeks after you had an arrest warrant to raid his house. And now you're trying to tell me he's a danger to the community? There's no way. I'm not believing it. But in Washington, D.C., they are all victims of this, and they are judged by a day on the calendar versus their actions that day.
Well, regardless of whether our whatever precipitated the events that led to what happened on January 6th, what's happened in the aftermath has been an absolute travesty of justice. Let's talk about that in a moment and what is next for your husband and for your family right after this. We've got a quick timeout. Debbie Matthews and Sarah Maccabee in studio with us. It's Matt Murphy and Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
People still giving you hate stuff?
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. I want to spend a moment talking to you about your personal safety with Defend Systems. And I mention your personal safety, but these are in public arenas and public areas. So the bottom line is simple. If you are a decision maker in a school, in a church, in a place of business, or anywhere that people gather, perhaps you should call Defend Systems today to schedule a get-together, an appointment either via telephone or otherwise, where you can talk to the team at Defend Systems. Brink, Tracy, the rest of the team, they want to speak with you about what they can do for you and your business. This is not just checking off a box somewhere. This is a life safety and security consultation firm based right here in Middle Tennessee. Expertise lies in their experience, and they have thousands of hours of real-world experience in active shooter response, workplace violence, site surveys, security improvement consultation, all available at your fingertips and all happening right here in Middle Tennessee. So once again, if you are a deacon at a church, if you're a business owner or a manager of a business, or if you're the head honcho at a school somewhere, you need to call Defend Systems and get them in your life. You need them in your life. It's a dangerous world. Hope is not a plan. DefendSystems.com or 615-236-6484. 236-6484 for Defend. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 136. Matt Murphy with Sarah Maccabee, who is the wife of Colton Maccabee, who remains incarcerated in Washington, D.C., wrongly so, in my estimation. And Debbie Matthews is also with us. I don't mean to put you third fiddle there, Debbie.
Oh, no. No, you always put me first fiddle, and I appreciate that. And thank you for letting us come in today. We are having a January 6th prisoner's wife tonight at the Memorial Building at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
The conservative Republicans want her to tell her story, and it's specifically about what has taken place since January 7th and on, because we are watching a two-tier justice system that is occurring right now. And not that we don't want people held accountable for their actions on January 6th. We just want people to be treated. There were no real arrests, incarcerations, or anything regarding the summer of the burning of 2020. Even this past couple of weeks, we've had people that have occupied a building and have been violent out in front of the White House. There was not one arrest. So we just have two tiers of how things are going down in this country, and we need to talk about it.
Well, and here's the deal. On January 6th, a group of people engaged in such a way where they were accused of certain things. Those groups of people are being treated differently than Antifa, BLM, any of these other groups of people, which has created a dynamic by which a lot of folks believe that none of the people on the property at the U.S. Capitol did anything wrong.
And that is incorrect.
And that's not right. Now, I mean, I understand. I mean, and I just was trying to establish a baseline for Sarah as to what happened to her husband, what she feel like he did, what was done to him, why was he there, and we did that. And his primary role and his primary goal on the steps during the moments of the altercation, which was videoed, was to try to calm the. And this is what I did see. I saw somebody that understood, for whatever reason, that the Capitol Police were doing what they were doing. I think he could probably put himself in their mind space better than anybody else there that day. And I think he was trying to be a dividing line, saying, hey, there are no, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but there are no bad people here. Let's everybody calm down and get people medical attention that need medical attention, et cetera. Is that fair?
Sure.
Bottom line is he is still in jail. He was never offered an opportunity to get out of jail, as you just mentioned moments ago. And he was convicted this past October. Were you at the trial?
I was.
Give me your thoughts about what you saw and what you experienced.
So you saw things happen in the trial that you would never see in other places outside of Washington, D.C. as jurors, just the same 14. We went through 70 and got down to 14. Our victims, in the case, as I mentioned earlier, named victims. So if you went and robbed a bank, those hostages would never decide your fate. The judge would never decide your fate in that. But that's what's happening. And they're being judged by a day on the calendar versus their actions that day because there's already a predetermined verdict. When you look at the cases of January 6th, there's a 99.6 conviction rate. Mm-hmm. The Department of Justice usually only has about a 60% conviction rate. But January 6th, it's just a whole different ballgame. But the thing that the prosecution was allowed to get away with on several occasions, but this one was a big one. They sent back evidence to the deliberation room that was never submitted into trial. So immediately that should have been a mistrial, except for the judge was like, well, I'm going to ask the jury if they can look past it. Can you unsee what you saw?
Right.
And of course they all sat there and said yes, and then an hour later came back in and convicted him of every charge.
Is there are we in the midst of an appeal? Is there an opportunity to appeal?
Yes, we can appeal, but we have to wait until after he's sentenced on February 29th. Do you mind if I address your audience?
Yeah, sure.
I want people to know, Matt, you're not a bad person. You have valid questions. But wait, there were bad things that happened on January 6th. There were good people that were set up. There were good people that got caught up in the moment and did bad things. However, those people that are charged, there needs to be accountability across the board. You can't charge some and not all. But they shouldn't be overcharged and overpunished. That is the problem.
Now, and I will say this, that when Sarah and I were talking, when we had the extent, I don't know what people are so upset about, but I expect more out of someone who has gone through the rigors of police officer training than your average Joe citizen. And so when I was pressing back, it was based on your husband's training and recognizing that those people across the line from him were trained to do a certain thing too, and they were told to do a certain thing too. Your response was valid in as much as he wanted to get help to people who had just been hurt. That was your response, and that makes sense to me. So my question was asked and answered.
Sure.
So, I mean, and that's fine, whatever. I mean, people are mad at me for asking questions. That's fine. I don't mind that at all. Because I recognize that even amongst the people, not your husband, but even amongst the people that did things that perhaps they regret or perhaps they even should be charged for, those are political pawns too. Every person on the campus of the United States Capitol on January 6th has become a political pawn with regard to a persecution to further a narrative that it was a, quote, insurrection that day. Did your husband ever speak to you about any of that in the aftermath of the charges against him and his arrest, that he somehow, a man that had sworn to uphold the law, was somehow being accused of attempting to incite rebellion against the United States of America?
Here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. There were little to no weapons there that day. You're not allowed to carry a weapon in Washington, D.C., yet you have the most armed people. Patriots are the most armed people in America. Going to Washington, D.C., if they wanted to overtake the Capitol and they wanted to overtake the government, they absolutely would have. It was just, if that's the way that people look at it, they should sit there and laugh. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. How can you go and have an insurrection with no weapons?
No, it makes no sense to me. I mean, well, and it is an attempt to create a narrative that doesn't exist.
Sure.
And it's also an attempt to basically say, hey, America, don't even try this, because this is what is going to happen to you. If you try to stand up, if something is not right, this is an example of set your butt down, don't even try this. I asked Sarah when she was on our radio show, because you know I do a radio show, Three Dudes with a View, which triggers liberals midway between Graceland and Dollywood every day of the week. But she was on our show, and I looked at her and I said, you know, I'm scared. Maybe I'm a little scared to talk to you about this. I don't want to be in a bucket where somebody's looking at me. But I need to know, have they come down on you in other ways? Has the IRS harassed you? And what about your bank? And you said that the bank debanked you, correct?
They did.
Why?
Because my husband was on the account. That's the thing. These people, until October of 2023, he was only charged. He was not convicted of anything. He was just being held, and he was charged. But it didn't matter. He had already been deemed a domestic terrorist. Right. They are literally on TSA. Anybody that was in the vicinity of Washington, D.C., January 3rd to January 7th. You could have been there for a work conference. You could have been there for a funeral. You could have just had a layover at one of their 3 airports, not even that being your final destination. You will forever be on a watch list.
Unless, apparently, it was you that was laying phony pipe bombs at the DNC. In that case, they got no clue who you are or what you were doing. Right. I mean, that has to be a frustrating aspect of this, too. That there's cherry picking even amongst the blanket accusations of terrorism and insurrection and rebellion. Then they cherry pick amongst those individuals. Ray Epps is one of those individuals that's been cherry picked. His name became such a focus that they finally saw fit to push that a little bit further, although I don't think
he got a really light sentence last week, I think. But she was debanked. There were also other apps that don't let you. I think Airbnb doesn't allow you, correct?
They canceled me.
I have several people wanting to know if you're willing to name the bank so that they know where not to bank.
Bank of America.
So you got debanked by Bank of America.
That's ironic.
Yeah.
Battle for the win.
Land of the free and home of the brave.
No, they didn't just debank me. They withheld my money. So they would take my deposits, but they wouldn't pay out any of my bills, and they wouldn't let me go to the bank and withdraw any money.
Why not?
Because he's deemed a domestic terrorist. And so I had power of attorney. I had everything. I had to get an attorney involved to get my money out of the bank to pay my bills.
So this is like civil asset forfeiture. You had to go to a court to prove your innocence.
Well, it gets even better because Airbnb, they canceled me because I'm associated with him. They not only canceled him, but when I was like, why is my account not working? They sent me a news article, mind you, a news article, and said, because you are associated with this man, you will never be able to have an account with us again.
What was the lady's name we had on whose parents were canceled because of her?
I was remembering that story, and I was wondering if I was remembering Sarah's story as told by someone
this
else.
is the second time we've heard this.
This is the second time that we've heard this, that she had an association with someone that was deemed a quote-unquote undesirable. What the hell? What is this country coming to?
I want to go back to the cherry picking. So not only do they cherry pick on a big scale, they cherry picked in my husband's case because the man that he went with is now an informant for the government, and they waited until after trial to give him misdemeanors. But he's the one who drove. He's the one who paid for everything. He had weapons on him. He was fist fighting with the police officers, and that's what he was wanted for on the FBI wanted list. But instead, my husband's sitting in jail.
Wait, did your husband know this guy?
Yes, we were friends. Were.
And so this guy turned state's evidence in order to get a sweetheart deal? Is that that's what you can figure out, or do you know that? Or
yeah, that's what we figured out. So they're cherry picking on top of cherry picking because they wanted to go after him because he saw, I believe that's why they held him on bond, is because he witnessed Roseanne Boylan being murdered and he was a police officer.
I think that is exactly.
I was about to say, I think the fact that your husband, that Colton is a police officer, I think that has, I don't know, I'm speculating here, but it seems to me that they're going after him harder. Even
because
more
he witnessed a murder.
Because he witnessed something like that and has the gravitas to perhaps testify and do something about what he saw.
Sure, because the FBI even went to the agencies that he had worked for, including Williamson County, and told them that they are not allowed to speak to me or speak to him. Clearly, they can't speak to him. But nobody within that agency will answer the phone, will answer any questions as to why they won't say anything, why they won't even give a character reference on behalf of him, because the FBI went to them and told them to shut up.
How is your husband holding up?
One day at a time. There's good days and there's bad days, but when you're thrown into a hot box for 29 going on 30 months, and you've just had your whole life destroyed in front of you, it's a very roller coaster thing.
What do you expect that will come out of February 29th, which is the day that he's sentenced?
To be honest with you, I don't know, because the government's going to ask for 14 to 17 years.
What?
Yes.
For what?
Because they can.
I mean, and for those that don't know, I mean, in the build up to the police officer, the Capitol police officer falling, I mean, and you can see what's on the video. There's a lot of things going on. There's an incredible amount going on in the video, and we kind of went over that at the beginning. But here's what was clear to me when I watched it, that your husband is creating something of a protective shell over that police officer at the point that he recognized that whatever happened before then, it appears to me, watching the video, that your husband recognized this dude's in trouble.
Yeah.
And I need to help him right now. And that's when he yelled no to the crowd, telling the crowd to get back. Is he being accused of attempting to assault or harm that? I mean, he was charged with that, right?
Every time he went to pick up that officer, they charged him with assault.
When he was trying to pick him up to help him.
Yes.
And so he's facing 14 to 16 years.
The government's going to ask for 14 to 17 years.
What is the best case scenario to
Time
come
served.
out of the 29th? That
Time
he gets
served.
to go home?
Sure.
And if that's not the case, are you prepared, or can we help in any way, offer our assistance to help with an appellate process?
Yeah, so right after the 29th, we are able to go through the appeals process.
Right.
So give your website of what you're doing now with your foundation to help other political prisoners.
So throughout this horrific mess, we realized that there were things not being met. One, for visitation. They weren't able to see their loved ones for 2 years, and then they couldn't financially afford for them to see it. So we funded visitation. But then on the flip side is we had a private attorney, and I had a very well-known attorney in D.C. look at me and said, Sarah, what are you doing? You've paid so much money and he's still sitting in jail. You haven't even gone to trial. You're going to have to pay even more money. Fire your private attorneys, get a public defender because he's going to be found guilty if he goes to trial in Washington, D.C., and then hire an appellate attorney. And so, unfortunately, these families did what everybody thinks you're supposed to do and go get the best attorney that you can get and pay whatever you need to pay. There's a 99.6 conviction rate, so it doesn't matter what kind of attorney you have. And so now they're literally sitting there serving their time because they don't have the money for an appellate attorney.
So you've started a foundation.
Yes, Stand in the Gap is our foundation, standinthegap.foundation, and we help January 6 defendants and their families.
How many Colton McApees are there out there in your estimation?
Very few. I do know that there are other people that, in my eyes, I believe are innocent. But a lot of the people, there's almost 1,300 individuals charged across America. Out of those 1,300, it's definitely only a handful of the people that are truly innocent of the charges against them. But the other people are overcharged and overpunished. Yeah,
I mean, and that's what gets convoluted to folks who are looking at this. It's hard to look at this with any sense other than the politics have taken over the justice.
The process is the punishment in this for sure. You don't ever hear about people waiting without bond for 3 years without trials.
It's ridiculous.
You don't ever hear about charges like this, a 99.6 conviction rate, a plea deal. They offered him a plea deal for 7 to 10 years.
I don't understand, and maybe I'm just ignorant. I don't understand why it's taken. Why the gap in sentencing? I mean,
again, it's never heard of. It's never heard of. Their speedy trial clocks have been stopped.
Right. I mean, the guilty verdict happened in October, right?
Yes.
October, November, December, January. I mean, 5 months between a verdict and a sentence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense.
And that was the soonest time. It wasn't like the sentencing was pushed back. That's what was decided on October 11th was February 29th.
And so you have to sit in jail for that length of time in addition to
So tonight at the Conservative Republicans meeting
at
the Memorial Building in Columbia, Tennessee, Sarah is joining us tonight, and we are showing the video in conjunction with everything so everybody can see what all went on. But what's really interesting is that the video audio, which you heard, where you heard him say no to the crowd, etc., was not played during his trial. The audio was not allowed to be played by the prosecution did not play the audio.
Why not?
So in the bond hearing, the audio wasn't played. And why? Because it completely goes against the narrative of what the prosecution wants. You look at it without the audio and you're like, this is very chaotic. But then you turn on the audio and he's communicating with the officers. So in the bond hearing, it wasn't played at all. And in the trial, the prosecution never played it. Either video didn't have any audio, it was sped up, or it was slowed down. So the defense had to get the audio in there.
Did they?
Yes. But it doesn't matter.
I mean, jury trial in D.C., it doesn't matter. You're right. Once again, give us the way that people can contact you and can support your husband.
Standinthegap.foundation.
And you, Debbie, once again, tonight?
Tonight at the Memorial Building in Columbia, the Conservative Republicans of Maury County is hosting Sarah to show her that there are people willing to listen. All we want is justice and equal justice under the law. And we want to hear about what's going on. But we believe that this is the hottest topic in the country right now. And we do believe that there's a two-tier justice system that is going on. If you are BLM, Antifa, or even a Palestinian rioter, you're not getting arrested. You can do whatever you want.
You can call for genocide on every college campus in America.
You can do whatever you want. But patriots, tax-paying citizens that work for a living, if they stand up and say something's not right, something smells stinky here, and they use their ability to assemble and to protest, oh, no.
Final thought. I know that you hope and pray, and I do too, that Colton is home long before November of 2024 or January of 2025. But what are your thoughts about, Trump has intimated that he will right some of these wrongs. Is that the ultimate hope?
For
Should
sure.
it come to that?
Yeah, for sure. That's the ultimate hope. But 2020 wasn't fixed. 2022 wasn't fixed. Why do we think that nothing's going to happen in 2024? We're just going to win by a landslide. That's not true. But even a blanket pardon, this isn't going to go away because there needs to be true investigations. Why? We just heard that the January 6th Select Committee deleted evidence, yet people are sitting in jail and convicted of crimes for deleting text messages.
Well, and the whole DNC thing, which I'm going to get into in the 2 o'clock hour, is just egregious too, because now we realize that the FBI the authorities on the scene that day knew that there was no threat, and they allowed that narrative to continue. Sarah, we've got to go. We've got to leave it there. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you.
It's been an incredibly compelling hour. Debbie, as always.
Thank you, Matt.
I
for
love
having
your
me.
black icky heart,
Hello.
as in
That's me.
reference to her sweater, not her actual black icky
Your
heart.
dogs and everybody's good at your
Everybody's
house?
wonderful.
Awesome.
Everybody's awesome.
Good to see you.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
There's Sarah Maccabee, wife of Colton Maccabee, and Debbie Matthews. Back in a moment on Super Talk.
2:01, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 46 degrees now in Nashville, Tennessee, and that sun and heat is helping out any icy conditions that were left over. And this big thaw could mean some new problems, though. Metro Water Services expects more water main breaks as the temperature rises and possibility for rain tonight as well. You got a forecast coming up in 2 minutes. A Georgia judge is set to hear arguments on Monday over whether to enforce a subpoena issued to Fulton County DA Fannie Willis as part of her top prosecutor's divorce case, which she received amid allegations that she and the prosecutor were involved in an improper relationship while prosecuting the election interference case against former President Donald Trump. Ike Ajaji is in Washington.
Willis is looking to quash the subpoena she received from the wife of Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade in order to avoid deposition in the case set for Tuesday. In a court filing, Willis claims her deposition would be outside the scope of discovery in the divorce matter and that it amounts to an attempt to harass and damage her professional reputation. The prosecutor's wife arguing that Willis has information regarding to her husband and that she wishes to determine details surrounding her romantic affair.
The FAA, they're recommending nearly 400 additional Boeing models be inspected. This is a different type of aircraft than the 737 MAX 9, where the door plug fell out of an Alaska flight a few weeks ago mid-flight, but it has the same door plug design. Now, officials want operators of the 737-900ER to make sure the door plugs are properly secured. The planes are flown by Alaska, Delta, and United Airlines, and the airlines say they've already begun the inspections. That is the latest news. A weather forecast up next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hey, folks, it's Matt Murphy. United Structural Systems is the one and only foundation repair and waterproofing company that you'll hear me recommend on Super Talk 99.7 WTN for good reason. For the last 30 years, they've been helping people just like you, and not just one or two or 100 or 1,000. Well over 25,000 satisfied customers in 30 years. Customers that believe that their homes are taken care of, and their homes are taken care of when it comes to their foundation and their waterproofing. Plus, they also do polylift leveling of your concrete outside of your home, perhaps your driveway or your walkway. They can do that as well. Whatever you need with regard to foundation repair, they can assist you. Plus, if you don't know what you need, it's a great time to give them a call, schedule an appointment, let them come out. They've been serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, and Northern Alabama for that 30-year time frame. They can help assist in diagnosing the issue. So if you smell water, if you've noticed some of the telltale signs, it's time to give them a call. If you don't know what those telltale signs are, go on their website, USSTN.com. That's USSTN.com. You can find out more there and give them a call and schedule that appointment today. A free consultation available for you. 615-488-7855, 488-7855. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. I just didn't understand what you were doing with the music there. It's 9 minutes after 2 o'clock. Glad to have you with us on Super Talk 99.7. A Monday edition continues. We'll make our way to Brian Wilson in the drive presently. You're invited to be a part of the show, either via the telephones at 615-737-9986. I want to open up the phones for thoughts and comment on what we just heard for the better part of an hour with Sarah Maccabee. Wife of Colton Maccabee, a former Williamson County deputy who was convicted this past October of 5 separate felony counts for his role, quote unquote, in the January 6th events happening at the United States Capitol. 615-737-9986. In the initial part of that conversation, a lot of people were yelling at me that I was being mean, and that's all well and good. I understand that perhaps you are accustomed to someone. I'll say this. I wanted to know where Sarah and her mind space was with regard to any culpability that her husband had regarding his actions that day. I asked, I pressed, and I was answered. And Sarah did a great job in doing so. And we hugged as she left. Two things can be true. And here's where I'm at on the issue. And I know that it angers a lot of you because you want black, you want complete black or complete white. You want complete exoneration of everyone involved in those events, and the devil was within the hallways of the FBI, or you want to condemn everyone that was on that property that day and commendate and commend those Capitol police officers and those individuals that infiltrated the crowds and whatnot. And I don't believe that it is black and white. We try to make it that, but I don't believe that it's so. I was not there that day. I can't tell you what I would have done. I am not a police officer. I cannot tell you how a police officer would have reacted to what happened. I can only tell you how I react to the evidence that I gathered with regard to the specifics of Colton Maccabee's involvement and then his eventual charge, arrest, and conviction. I believe that his conviction was a political persecution. I believe that the felony charges against him were a political persecution. But I do believe that he committed acts that would rise to the level of misdemeanors that day. That is my take on it. And for my trouble, I'm being screamed at every way till Sunday on the super text line for being some sort of a heretic or something or another. I don't know why I'm being yelled at, honestly.
Well, she even said herself there were a number of people there that deserved to be prosecuted. But
she doesn't think her husband's one of them, and that's fair.
Which is fair. If your wife's not going to defend you, who will?
That's right.
But they're being prosecuted, but they're being over prosecuted and over punished.
Right, and that's the point. And my point was this: there were people that breached areas at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th that broke the law. I don't think we benefit our cause, the cause of liberty and freedom in the United States of America in any fashion. I don't think we benefit the cause of demanding free, fair, and open elections in any fashion by denying that. And 0231 screams, it's called entrapment. You couldn't entrap me to go into the Capitol if you tried. So I understand that there were a lot of people that infiltrated the moment, and I get that. It just, I hope one of the reasons that you come to be a part of our portion of the day, obviously we try to entertain you in some form or fashion, because you have to entertain first in order to inform or educate or to create a dynamic. My role is to create a dynamic by which you think for yourself. I'm not asking you to think the way I think just because I say it so. I'm asking you to think for yourself. I'm asking you to give the brain a workout that God gave you. I'm trying to get the entire dynamic of the incident that happened broadly and more specifically. Typically, what occurs is that people come into safe spaces and they either present something totally in one way or totally in another. We now live in a space where there are 100%ers attempting to run the show. And, I mean, for example, 9978 says somebody sounds like a rhino. You wouldn't know what a rhino was if it ran up your ass, 9978, okay? You couldn't define that for me. How am I a rhino when I've never claimed to be a Republican in my life? So, back to the point. And I bring this up because I think it's important. It is easy to gather an assembled mass of people and tell them that nobody did anything wrong on the day in question because of the way that gross, nasty leftist political operatives have attempted to change the narrative about what happened that day. A legitimate political protest broke out on January 6th, and it was righteous and it was right. It was born of a speech delivered by Donald J. Trump on the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. Thousands upon thousands of individuals assembled to hear this speech, and they further decided to protest in a manner of their own choosing as granted to them by God Almighty and certified by the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, which is exactly what was happening on the day in question, January 6th. At the time that there was a breach of security and a breach of protocol, individuals allowed their emotions to overtake them on that day, and they committed violations of the law. Violations that are no more than misdemeanors. And sadly, I can't even get across to a lot of you that that is a fact. Now, what happened in the aftermath of January 6th is far more a danger to America than what happened on that day. Let me say it again. What happened beyond January 6th and the way in which leftists and activists who are aligned with said leftists are moving the needle on the narrative is a far greater danger to the future of the United States of America than anything that happened on that day. What happened that day was a protest that was originally peaceful became unpeaceful. And you're not allowed to engage in unpeaceful protests. You're not certified that right by the Constitution of the United States. It says peacefully, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What happened beyond that, and the manner in which they changed what was a protest that became non-peaceful and that broke out into fighting amongst the Capitol Police officers who were woefully undermanned because of Nancy Pelosi. The political left has turned that into a narrative of insurrection. And because we are so angry and frustrated over that change in narrative, because we are so angry, and rightly so, by the way, because we are so pissed off about the way that they've turned peaceable Americans into criminals. Americans like Colton Maccabee into political prisoners, because we're so pissed off about that. We don't have the ability in some cases to recognize some of the missteps that happen along the way. I can promise you this. If I become a part of the problem, in your opinion, if you're a God-fearing American, if you believe in our Constitution of the United States of America, my cause is for freedom and liberty. My cause is to advance the promise of the United States of America. My cause is to insist upon individual freedom, liberty, and responsibility amongst Americans, and the only way to advance that cause is to guarantee free and open elections, to guarantee elections unfettered by lies, fraud, malfeasance, or shenanigans. And if I become a part of the problem, we're lost. We're lost. And so, inasmuch as so many of you are calling me an ass, you are correct. I am. And I accept that. It's 2:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You know, the ice is melting. The conditions are getting a little more tolerable in and around Middle Tennessee. Might be a good time for you to dial this number up and get Jeff Eddy and one of his teammates out to your home to check out that heater if it's not been running as it should. Perhaps the cold weather put too much of a strain on it, and you've noticed that. Perhaps you noticed that it was not running properly. Maybe you've smelled a funny smell or you've noticed a funny sound. Whatever the reason might be, know this. Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling are going to do it the right way. They're never going to try to upsell you on something you don't need, and they will come out at any point in the evenings and even on the weekends and charge you the same thing that they would right now at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday afternoon. Why? Because they know your heater doesn't know what time it is. So why should they charge you more at 7 o'clock at night rather than at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? They don't. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and Elite Pro partner with Rheem. EfficientHVAC.net. That's EfficientHVAC.net or 615-784-4424. 784-4424 for Efficient.
A thaw out going on in Middle Tennessee, but it's not that way towards the western portion of the state. And a famous West Coast hamburger chain having to close down one of the restaurants. We'll tell you about it. 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 2:24. 3 o'clock can't get here soon enough. I'm just tired. It's Monday and I'm tired. I've allowed the super texters to beat me down. I am, you're right. I'm a right. No. You don't help me out here, McMorey. And Bell, you don't help me out either. I don't need it. You're right. You're right. Everything you're saying about me, I'm not a real American. I don't really care about my country. I'm a rhino, despite the fact that I've never described myself as a Republican. Let me give you that's good. I'm in agreement with everything. Such as, I wonder what side you'd be on in 1776. Governments are instituted among men deriving from their just powers of the consent of the governed, or wherever in any form of government becomes destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. To which I responded, I'm all in for a new America. Are you? Are you in for a new America? I agree. I'm a part of the problem. 615-737-9986. There will be a black national anthem sung at the by the way, you can call in. Any of you people that say that I'm a part of the problem and that I'm not on the side of good and righteousness and justice, then y'all are welcome to call 615-737-9986. Hell, you can have this radio show for all I care. The NFL announced the pregame lineup for Super Bowl 58 earlier this week, and it has drawn a little bit of, I wouldn't say concern, but confusion over its intention to have the black national anthem played before the game. Lift Every Voice and Sing is known as the black national anthem. It's been played at every Super Bowl since Super Bowl, 55, I guess? 2020? But has not stirred the level of controversy that it is stirring on social media this time around, because the announcement that it will be performed was included in an announcement that it will actually be aired this time around. I thought we only had one national anthem, but, I'm always up for new ideas. The league drew a level of criticism over its decision to have the black national anthem played before the game. The NFL now says the song will be performed by Grammy-winning R&B singer Andrea Day. Radio host Larry Elder, former presidential candidate, good friend of the show, Larry Elder, was among those to speak out. While they're at it, how about the University of Michigan fight song he wrote? Another NFL fan responded to Adam Schefter when he posted the NFL announcement saying, "Bro, we're American. Why do we need Lift Every Voice and Sing?" Others wondered what would happen if the United States somehow sang a white national anthem, or we had a white U.S. national anthem at the event, to which Nicole Hannah-Jones argued the U.S. already has a white national anthem. It's called the national anthem. The white national anthem is played. It was written by a racist enslaver who believed black people were inferior and fought abolitionists in the courts. The NFL started playing the black national anthem following the 2020 season, or in the 2020 season, following the death of George Floyd. It is rarely, if ever, made an appearance on television. However, this year, apparently at the Super Bowl, it was decided that it would be a part of the television presentation. Reba McEntire, for her part, has been tapped for the national anthem, and Post Malone has been picked to sing America the Beautiful, which ought to be the national anthem, let's be honest. It's not. It ought to be. It's a much better song. I don't know why. I mean, if we begin this road of cherry-picking songs that fit the mold for each identity group, then I don't know why it would stop with Black America and the Black National Anthem. I imagine that the LGBTQ community has something of a national anthem. I don't know what it would be. Maybe a Lady Gaga song or something. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it'd be Madonna.
Madonna?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably so.
Didn't that one woman tell us it was Rainbow by Dolly Parton?
That one woman did.
Touche, Mr. Morey. Touche.
You know what? You know what? Looking back on it, when they write the history of my radio career, that will be the beginning of the end. When the lady told me that Dolly Parton was a part of the LGBTQ conspiracy for having the audacity to write a song about a rainbow. That's okay. Maybe I'm just in a moment of weakness. I'm bested, though. Anthony's in Nashville. I'll let him take over for a minute. Hey, Anthony, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you, man?
I'm good. Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know, I think you're right, and I agree with your take on the whole thing with January 6th. While it is frustrating with what happened, I mean, the only thing you can do at that point is just accept what the wrong was and accept what the right was and understand that the people that did wrong have been taken care of, but people that haven't done wrong, or correction, they've done wrong, but they were abused by the system. Yeah, hopefully one day we get this taken care of and we can move on and hope for the best. But Matt, I want you to know the people that were beating you up, they're just very angry. They're still emotional. That's all it is.
And I don't imagine that they want an advocate for their cause. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not that guy. Thank you, Anthony, for the call. I am an independent thinker. I assess things based on my own life experience and my own analysis. I don't engage in groupthink. I don't belong to any clubs. I don't listen to other commentators and gravitate toward their way of thinking because it collects a crowd of group thinkers. And I expect that you will not be a group thinker. I don't want you to believe what I say just because I say it. I want you to think for yourself, which is a much more dangerous and difficult prospect than just being a herd. Sadly, there are a lot of conservatives that are herd. Not HEARD, the other one. I've seen that more and more. It was long a part of the trials and travails of conservative thought that conservatism could not gather together as groups of people because they thought independently of themselves, and they forgave fellow conservatives, or libertarians for that matter, those small times that they might have minor disagreement for the greater good of the United States of America and for the greater agreement. It is not the case anymore. It is not the case anymore. You want to live in an echo chamber like most liberals do, where the only thing that you hear are things that confirm your bias. I'm seeing it more and more. I promise you, the liberals are better at it than you, and they will destroy you as a result of it. It's 2:31 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.231, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 47 degrees in Music City. A much-needed thaw out here in the mid-state. Chance for rain tonight and much of this week. Weather forecast on the way in 2 minutes. And that thaw may be happening here in Middle Tennessee, but not in Memphis. Derek Dennis with more.
A boil water advisory remains in effect for Memphis, a city suffering through multiple days of frigid temperatures that started last weekend into the weekend. Frozen pipes, broken water mains compromising the water supply for some 600,000 residents. Memphis Light, Gas, and Water saying water pressure has normalized, but a boil water advisory will continue pending further test results and may not be lifted until next week. A thaw is happening with temperatures finally rising above freezing.
And a famous West Coast hamburger chain closing one of its Northern California restaurants because of crime problems in Oakland. Here's Alex Stone.
In-N-Out Burger is an iconic California chain that spread to other states, but the company says it is closing its Oakland location because of crime. The Oakland In-N-Out Burger has been open for 20 years. In a statement, In-N-Out's chief operating officer says customers and associates have been regularly victimized by car break-ins, property damage, theft, and armed robbery, and the company cannot ask them to visit an unsafe environment. It'll close in March.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. Tennessee Men's Clinic has for years, since 2014, supported men just like you in your effort to get more energy, more vim, verve, and vitality in your life. You know, something that affects at least half the men that are listening to me right now at some point in their lives will be issues involving intimacy with your loved ones. And that's all I'll say about that, except to say that Tennessee Men's Clinic can help. There's nothing to deny, nothing to put off, and nothing to be ashamed about. But sadly, many men do put this off. They don't want to address it because addressing it means that they recognize in their heads that something's going wrong. Well, once you address it, you can so quickly get beyond it. Thank you to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They have done what it takes to get you back to the energy levels that you've wanted. And it doesn't necessarily manifest itself with intimacy. It can also be, going to the gym. It can also be going on walks. It can be working in the yard. It can be snow shoveling the snow on your driveway. Whatever it might be, if you don't have the energy that you've wanted, let's get with the Tennessee Men's Clinic and see what they can do for you. 615-208-9090 is the telephone number to book an appointment. 2 locations to serve you. One's in Midtown Nashville, been there since 2014. The other opened last year in Franklin. 615-208-9090. It's the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Hey, folks, Matt Murphy for Craft Body Scan. Brand new technology, not new technology around the country, but new to Nashville exists with Craft Body Scan. I'm so excited about it. I want to tell you all about it. You can make 2024 the year of you with a couple's heart and lung scan for just $149. This is a value well in excess of $2,000. Could be yours for $149 right now. Call to book this very seamless and quick process. You don't have to take all your clothes off and all of that. You are fully clothed. The process itself after your consultation takes about 5 to 8 minutes, and it can find out what's going on internally within your body before it becomes a big deal and before you even notice it through symptoms. All scans are read by a board-certified radiologist. These are CT scans that can identify the beginnings of heart disease or lung cancer. Heart disease, the number one killer in America. Lung cancer, the number one cancer killer in America. Let's get beyond that. Let's get to the root of whatever might be going on with you before you even recognize it, and let's give ourselves peace of mind. You'll sleep better tonight. CraftBodyScan.com. That's CraftBodyScan.com or 615-436-1000. 436-1000. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you until 3. Hey, there's a dude playing on the LPGA Tour or trying to play on the LPGA Tour. Have you guys seen this? This fella by the name of Haley Davidson, who I guess won some sort of qualifying event that gives him/her an opportunity to play on the LPGA Tour, which apparently I was always under the impression that it was the Ladies Professional Golf Association, and I guess now they're allowing individuals that consider themselves ladies to be playing. And so this fellow took advantage of that and won himself a golf tournament. Congratulations to him.
Is he gonna? Did he wear a skirt?
I don't think so.
Is there a dress code on those things?
You can wear pants, shorts, or skirts.
Oh, can you? Okay.
I've always said that the PGA Tour should. I don't know why they have this antiquated rule that they demand pants, but the PGA Tour, the quote unquote men's tour, they force you to wear pants.
When you go golfing, what do you wear?
Shorts.
That's what I thought.
Unless it's too cold, and then I wear, if I'm wearing pants on the golf course, it's because I have to, because I'm too cold. Bottom line. Let's talk to Bobby in East Tennessee. Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Now.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey, my cell phone may cut out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good. I hear you.
Well, I just want to call in to say I listened to you quite a bit, and you have done nothing wrong. I do know this country is headed for some bad.
Well, I guess you did cut out.
He predicted correctly.
Yeah. Way to go, Bobby. You saw that coming. It's like you're not Nostradamus. You're Bobby Damas. You saw the future. 9978 says, "You're a rhino. You're in the wrong radio station. Go preach on PBS. They'll love you there. I'm going to remember that comment, and if I see you, I'll put you in your place. You're a rhino." Oh, so I'm getting threatened. Oh, that's nice. 9978, I'm at 10 Music Circle East from noon until 3 every day, buddy. I've been around the block a time or two. Over the course of 24 years, I've not allowed internet threats to move me or move my needle in any way whatsoever. So I'm not promoting anything but good, healthy dialogue. You get to act in a manner and a fashion of your own choosing, okay? Barry is next up. Barry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Matt. I listened to you and Brian and everybody, and I say I agree with you. I went to the Capitol building in '97 on my senior trip, and there's the rope barriers and things, and they say you do not cross. And common sense, which I think a lot of people in this country seem to be lacking nowadays, says that you don't go there. And so agree that the punishments they're receiving are probably a little more extreme, but to say that they get off scot-free is wrong. I mean, you look at Black Lives Matter, all the things that they've done, and you don't hear a lot about the prosecutions of them for their crimes.
Well, what people recognize, circling back to the original point of the conversation, and people got mad at me for having a dialogue with Sarah. Oddly, Sarah did not get mad at me for having a dialogue, but a lot of the audience did, and that's fine. And that's fine. I'm not here to serve to your pleasure. I'm here to tell you what I believe is going on in the world, to provide analysis, an opportunity for you to speak truth to power. That's what I'm here for. So, it's like water off my back. I'll just choose not to care about these things, and let's see where that gets us. If you beat people down based on mild disagreement enough, they'll choose to just disengage altogether, even the best among us. And when that happens, we'll find out where that gets us in the world in which we live. I'll be fine. I'm not so sure about the country. That said, where all of this came from was my assertion that certain people did things on January 6th that merited arrest. That's all. And for that, I've been told that I don't believe in America. All right. That's fine. I don't care. One way or the other. You are as entitled to your opinion as I am mine, and they are they're worth exactly what you think they are. Both of them. Andy's in Mount Juliet. Hey, Andy, how are you?
Hey, buddy. I love to cut on you as much as anybody. I have called in before just to tell Bel K to call you a dumbass. That was the funniest line when he done that one day. You remember? You remember, don't you?
I do. That was funny. I needed that. Andy, thank you.
But let me tell you something, man. You didn't do nothing wrong.
Look, I don't mean to stop. Well, go ahead.
You sound like somebody kicked you in the teeth, and that ain't right. I'm just a friend you hadn't met yet, okay? But what you said was right. The questions.
Here's what's under my skin. You've inspired me. You've lit a fire, and I'm gonna Andy, thank you. You've inspired me. Here's what I don't understand. What person went inside the Capitol around the security barriers and didn't know they were doing something wrong? I'm not saying they should be arrested. And I'm not saying that the left has not used this against us. That is truth. That's what got me in all of this, is suggesting that a few people did some things wrong on January 6th. And for my trouble, that's where we've come to. Thank you, Andy, for the call. I'm sorry that I suspended it. Jason is next up. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Hey, brother, I'm good. I just wanted to call real quick. Listen, I think you're doing a great job. I really do. I'm not here to blow sunshine up your butt, though. I do say you're like an acquired taste. When I first started listening to you, I'll be honest, I thought you come across a little pompous, and just based off of that, I was like, I don't want to listen to this guy no more. But the more I listen to you, it's like, you know what? It makes sense. You know, you're entitled to your opinion. I agree with your opinion on this case. So I just want to say, keep doing the good work. Touching on the last caller a little bit, I know you're saying it's not bothering you, but it kind of sounds like it's getting me a little bit. So
it bothers me because I feel like, I'll tell you, I agree with you, Jason. I'll tell you what bothers me. It bothers me that we have a contingent. I'll tell you what bothers me. And I mean this with every fiber of my being. This is not radio. I think we've lost. And it hurts me. I believe that we've lost this country. And it bothers me. Because when every other country that believed in freedom and fought back against tyranny and oppression, when those tyrannical governments popped up elsewhere around the world, there was always us to go to. There was always us to fall back on. And there is no us anymore. And there's no us to fall back on anymore. That's what bothers me. And I try every single day of my life to remain optimistic about the future of the United States of America. And it's more and more difficult. Everywhere you look, you can't even get individual personal interests out of the way enough to collect people together to fight back anymore. If you want to know what upsets me so much, that's it. In a nutshell. I don't think we're going to win in 2024. I hope I'm proven wrong, because I think people are engaged in taking it from us right now, legally or through legal mechanisms or means. If you want to know what's wrong with me, that's what's wrong with me. It's 2:49 on Super Talk. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 256. Matt Murphy and you. Come hook or crook. I'll be back high noon tomorrow. In the meantime, Brian Wilson set to take over for the drive this afternoon from 3 until 7 o'clock.
Don't make me break into this Kermit the Frog voice again to get you out of your funk, buddy.
I'm in a funky mood today.
You know what? Can I just say I get it, because I'll give you an example. You know, you and I, we come here every day. We try to fight the good fight. You and I have dedicated our lives to trying to make a difference and to try to separate truth from fact and truth from fiction and just get after it every day. And then, you know, some bonehead comes along and just makes you want to just punch somebody's lights out. Let me give you a quick example. So I drive all the way to Iowa, 11 hours in a snowstorm, whiteout conditions. For 3 days, I covered the Iowa caucuses, dragging around 150 pounds worth of radio gear in minus 17-degree weather. I cover it, then after I do my show there live on what is a federal holiday. You know, you and I were really supposed to have the day off.
We were,
but we worked because it was important to our audience. And then the next day, I drive 11 hours back. And I reported in, I think 3 or 4 times throughout the day on different shows.
On your own show.
On my own show, because you filled in for me. And then then some guy writes, "Where's Wilson today? He's such a slacker." And I said, "Really?" And then, you know, because I went to a Ramaswamy event and I went to a Nikki Haley event, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be covering the caucus, right? And I tried to get into a Trump event and they wouldn't let me in. And DeSantis and we couldn't hook up because the schedules. He was out in a different part of the state. But one way, I was out there doing what I went there to do, which is to cover the caucus, to report back what I found when I got to Iowa. And I posted a picture on social media of me at the Nikki Haley thing, and I had a Nikki Haley credential around my neck, which I needed to get into the press pit. And then everybody goes, "Well, Wilson, I knew you're such a rhino." And I said, "Dear Lord, do you not understand, you know, what it is to go out and cover an event? Who else was out there covering it for you?" You know, and I said, it drove me crazy. But then I realized, you know, it's not the vast majority of our audience. It's just a couple of boneheads who want to get us angry. And, you know, by the way, it made me angry for the whole day. I was so angry about it. But, you know, we just got to keep. The problem is that we're fighting among ourselves.
Yep.
I mean, the people who are within the center of what we honestly, quite frankly, there's not a dime worth of difference between what most of our listeners believe and what you and I believe. And yet, you know, somebody finds one little thing that they want to disagree with you about, and all of a sudden, you know, you're a rhino. And so I get it, man. I absolutely get it.
Thank you for making me feel better, Brian. I appreciate that.
Sorry to go on my little rant.
Look, the image of you with the Haley thing and the response. Oh, I knew it. I'm just waiting. Anyway, Brian Wilson's coming up in just a moment. He really did make me feel better. I appreciate that. There's Brian Wilson and his rant. We got Mac Maury in the newscast coming up in just a moment. Wilson from 3 until 7 this afternoon, and I'll be back after it. I don't know what I'm talking about tomorrow. Probably toaster talk or, you know, lawn and garden care. Maybe, you know, taking your calls on mechanical issues in your automobiles. Whatever the case may be, I'll be back at high noon tomorrow. Until then, so long.